Samantha Harper was 8 months pregnant and full of hope, but her estranged husband, Daniel, was full of rage, and in a single cold morning, his obsession would turn their love story into a scene of unimaginable violence. Samantha Harper was 8 months pregnant and living in the quiet town of Maple Ridge, a place where most neighbors knew each other by name, and where the loudest sound at night was usually the wind moving through the trees. She was known for her kindness, her warm smile, and the gentle way she spoke to everyone she met. Friends described her as someone who lit up a room, even in her final months of pregnancy when moving around had become more difficult. On the surface, she appeared to be focused on preparing for her new baby's arrival. But beneath that calm, Samantha was carrying a heavy burden. Her marriage to Daniel Harper had collapsed just months earlier, and the separation had not been peaceful. The relationship had begun with passion and promises, but over time, Daniel's temper and controlling nature began to surface. The tension in their home grew worse after Samantha announced her pregnancy. Instead of joy, Daniel responded with mood swings and unpredictable anger. Arguments became a regular occurrence, and eventually Samantha decided she needed to protect herself and her unborn child. She filed for divorce and obtained a restraining order after a particularly heated confrontation that left her shaken for days. Although Daniel had moved out, his presence lingered. Samantha began to notice unsettling signs that she was still being watched. On several occasions, she saw an unfamiliar car idling near her driveway late at night, its headlights off, but the silhouette of a person visible behind the wheel. Other times, she caught glimpses of movement in the shadows of her backyard, though when she looked again, no one was there. The feeling of being followed stayed with her, especially when she left home alone. She shared her fears with her sister, explaining that she had an unshakable sense that Daniel wasn't ready to let go. She tried to dismiss it as paranoia brought on by stress, but deep down she knew the danger was real. Every creak in the floorboards, every strange noise outside her window, set her on edge. Even simple routines, grocery shopping, doctor's visits, walking to the mailbox became moments where she scanned her surroundings. The people closest to her urged her to stay alert and keep her doors locked, but no one could have predicted just how close that unseen threat was creeping. Samantha clung to the hope that she could make it through the final weeks of her pregnancy without incident, unaware that the countdown to a far darker day had already begun. Daniel Harper's life had begun unraveling the moment Samantha walked away. Once a respected local mechanic with steady work and a reputation for reliability, he quickly found himself slipping into isolation. The restraining order changed everything. Customers began avoiding his shop, whispers circulated in town, and friends distanced themselves. His business slowed to a crawl, bills piled up, and the man who once prided himself on independence found himself sleeping in his truck some nights just to escape the emptiness of his small rented apartment. In his mind, every hardship was Samantha's fault. He told himself she had destroyed his life, taken his future, and turned the community against him. The bitterness didn't fade, it grew. In the weeks after the separation, Daniel's thoughts became consumed by Samantha. He replayed every argument, every moment she had stood her ground, until his resentment hardened into something far more dangerous. Instead of moving on, he started watching her. He learned the patterns of her days, the times she left for appointments, the friends she visited, the way her porch light went out just after 10 each night. It was no longer enough to simply think about her. He needed to be near her, to keep her within sight, even if she didn't know it. Small actions began to hint at a brewing plan. He drove to a rural sporting goods store and purchased ammunition, telling the clerk it was for pest control on a friend's property. He visited gun ranges alone, practicing until his aim was sharp and steady. At night, he parked his black pickup in hidden spots where he could watch her house without being seen. He told himself he was only making sure she wasn't doing anything wrong. But in truth, every mile he drove, every hour he sat in silence, brought him closer to a decision he would never undo. His anger twisted into a conviction that she deserved to be confronted, that she needed to understand the pain she had caused him. The thought of Samantha moving on, raising their child without him, possibly with someone else, gnawed at him until it was unbearable. The man who once claimed to love her had become a shadow of himself, driven by obsession and rage. In his mind, the separation was not the end of their story. It was only the beginning of something much darker. And every day he inched closer to acting on the violent thoughts he had been quietly feeding. On a cold Tuesday morning, the air hung heavy with frost, coating the grass in a pale shimmer as Samantha Harper stepped outside her home. She had a routine prenatal checkup scheduled, one of the final ones before her baby was due. The quiet streets of Maple Ridge felt calm, almost a calm, as she drove through the familiar neighborhood. Unseen by her, a black pickup truck pulled onto the road a few minutes after she left. It followed at a careful distance, never getting close enough to be obvious. The driver knew her route, every turn, every stop, and he had been waiting for this moment. The town was still waking up. Storefronts were closed, and traffic was light. Samantha hummed softly to herself, focusing on her baby's movements, unaware that danger was closing in. As she turned into the small medical clinic's parking lot, the truck slowed, circling once before pulling in behind her. She stepped out of her car, adjusting her coat against the cold, her mind already on the appointment ahead. The first shot rang out before she could take another step. It cracked through the still air like a whip, followed almost instantly by two more. Witnesses later said they heard the sound echo down the street, a noise so sharp and sudden that it didn't register as gunfire until they saw her fall. Samantha collapsed onto the asphalt, her hands instinctively reaching toward her stomach. The black pickup roared to life, its tires screeching as it tore out of the lot. Inside the clinic, staff rushed to the door, calling for help. A passerby dialed emergency services, struggling to keep his voice steady as he described the scene. Within minutes, police and paramedics arrived, but it was already too late. Samantha and her unborn child were both gone. The sight left even seasoned officers shaken. A security camera mounted above the clinic's entrance had captured everything. The shooter's face was hidden, but the vehicle's license plate was visible in the grainy footage. It was enough for investigators to identify the owner, a name that no one in Samantha's family wanted to hear: Daniel Harper. As the news spread, the entire town was gripped with disbelief and anger. For those who knew the couple, the realization that the tragedy had been building for months was as devastating as the act itself. Within hours of the shooting, police were on the move. Armed with the surveillance footage from the clinic, they obtained a warrant for Daniel Harper's arrest. The black pickup truck seen fleeing the scene was registered in his name, and its license plate matched perfectly. Officers descended on Daniel's rural property, a small, weathered home set back from the road and surrounded by overgrown grass. The driveway was empty at first glance, but as they moved around the property, they found the truck hidden behind a leaning shed, its engine still warm from a recent drive. Inside the vehicle, investigators discovered several spent shell casings, the same caliber as those used in the attack. In the cab, a torn flannel jacket lay crumpled on the seat, its cuffs stained with what appeared to be gunpowder residue. The evidence only deepened the sense of urgency. Daniel was armed, dangerous, and now on the run. A search of his workshop revealed more chilling clues. On a cluttered workbench sat a half-empty box of ammunition, alongside a handgun cleaning kit. Nearby, officers found a single sheet of lined paper covered in jagged handwriting. The note was bitter and rambling, filled with accusations of betrayal, resentment, and a belief that Samantha had taken everything from him. Its final line suggested a man who saw no path forward. "If I can't have my life back, no one will." The county sheriff's office launched a manhunt, setting up roadblocks and deploying search teams with tracking dogs. Helicopters circled overhead, their spotlights sweeping across open fields and wooded areas. Residents were urged to lock their doors and report any unusual activity. Rumors began to spread. Some claimed to have seen Daniel's truck speeding down back roads. Others swore they spotted him walking near abandoned barns on the edge of town. For 2 days, tension gripped Maple Ridge. Every noise in the night sent a ripple of fear through the community. Finally, on the third morning, a deputy spotted movement in a field near a shallow creek. Approaching cautiously, the officers found Daniel lying in the tall grass. His body was still, a firearm resting beside his hand. The manhunt was over, but the grim discovery brought no relief to those who had been hoping for justice in a courtroom. The truth of what had happened was now frozen in place, unable to be contested, and the town was left with more questions than answers. The autopsy confirmed what many had feared: Samantha's unborn baby had died instantly with her. The medical examiner described it as a tragedy within a tragedy, 2 lives cut short in the span of seconds. The news spread quickly through Maple Ridge, and the grief was almost tangible. In the days that followed, the community came together, organizing a candlelight vigil in the town square. Hundreds gathered, holding flickering lights in the cold evening air, their faces reflecting sorrow and disbelief. Photographs of Samantha smiling during her pregnancy were displayed beside a small cradle draped in white fabric, a haunting reminder of the future that would never come. Her family, though overwhelmed by grief, spoke about Samantha's gentle spirit, her excitement for motherhood, and the way she had been preparing her home for the baby's arrival. Friends shared stories of her kindness and her ability to make others feel safe, even as she had been living with her own fears. The vigil ended in silence, broken only by the sound of the candles burning in the wind. While the manhunt had ended with Daniel's death, the investigation continued. Detectives pieced together the final weeks of his life, mapping out his movements and collecting evidence to understand the depth of his intentions. The letter found in his workshop became a focal point of the case, painting a clear picture of premeditation. Every detail from the ammunition purchase to his careful observation of Samantha's routines pointed to a calculated plan rather than a spontaneous act of rage. With no trial to hold him accountable, there was no cross-examination, no opportunity for Samantha's family to face him in court. For them, the absence of legal proceedings felt like an unfinished chapter, a story with no true ending. They were left to navigate their loss without the closure that a conviction might have brought. In the months that followed, Maple Ridge struggled to return to its quiet rhythm. The house where Samantha had lived remained empty, its windows dark, as if frozen in time. The clinic parking lot, once an ordinary stop in her weekly routine, became a place people avoided. Her story lingered in the conversations of neighbors, a cautionary tale about ignored warnings and the dangers of unchecked obsession. Even years later, her name was spoken with a mix of sadness and reverence, a reminder that beneath the surface of even the most peaceful places, darkness can take root and shatter lives in an instant.